Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I know we promised Meredith Finch this evening, but unfortunately, she's not going to be able to join us. She ran off with a fantasy superhero group to be their leader in Hollywood, and she's probably going to be producing the next great epic supergroup of our time. But luckily, we have her stunt double here, and she's going to be standing in. We'll be right back with Meredith Finch.
I've lost sound for some reason. Oh, there we go.
Oh, we did. Sorry about
Now
that.
I have sound. Yay!
I should.
Like, oh no, I'm panicking. I'm silently panicking back here because I can't hear anything.
Mrs. Finch, I can't get away from these rough starts. That happens all the time. I should be better with technology, but I don't know what it. That's probably about the third time I've done that. Is mute my intro. What I was saying before while I was muted was that Meredith Finch is the writer for Xena Warrior Princess. She wrote Conan. She wrote Wonder Woman. She's also the creator of Rose over at Image Comics. A very accomplished fantasy writer, and very excited to have you tonight. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. And when it comes to technology, not to worry, because that's what I have 16-year-olds for. So.
Yeah, I know. I have to have mine as well. Show me some things, some of the new stuff that's coming out. I mean, I'm pushing 40, so I mean, I've seen quite a bit of technology, but I think this stuff like the lives and the video recording, and I've never really been good with answering machines anyway. Like those, I don't know what it is, if it's a phobia of being recorded or what it is. Like I have to battle that every time, but I love doing this, so I go for it. And yeah, these are some people in the chat from our studio that came to support
Hey.
the boss man. I think you know Jesse Hansen from
Yes.
Cornerstone Creative. Yeah, that's him there. And then our lead writer is Daniel Horowitz. And this coincidentally, these are the two guys that got me into comics. So if you want to know who to blame at that point when we get there, it's their fault.
I know who I blame in my life, so
Yeah.
it's always important to have someone to blame.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to have a fall guy for sure. And so how have things been going with the pandemic, Mrs. Finch? You know, this has been hard, obviously, on all of us. And you know, in your line of work, A lot of times money comes from going to conventions and also getting new freelance gigs. And so how have you been with all of this?
It's been very stressful for a lot of comic people, and I don't think that David and I are the exception to that rule, because you watch um, Diamond closing its doors. We were in the middle of printing my Kickstarter book, The Book of Ruth, and all the soft cover books got printed in time and shipped out. But then before the hardcovers got printed, the covers are printed, but the interiors hadn't been put in, and then all of a sudden the printer shut down. So it's very stressful to know, and then you to know are and you see like DC and Marvel all sort of shrinking the number of titles they're going to be producing every month.
Yeah.
I know certainly in Canada, the provinces that are opening right now are saying, yes, we're going to open businesses, but it's going to be a long time before large gatherings are ever going to be
That's
open.
right.
That's convention. That's the way in which I interact with my fans, and I meet with my fans, and I promote my work. And it's a big deal for us. So I would not say that the COVID-19 pandemic, this crisis has not hit us. I would say we are more blessed than a lot of comic creators, because David has been working on a project that he's been working on for the last almost 3 years. That project isn't impacted by this. So he'll continue to work away on his project, and
that's good to hear.
Which is nice, because then I don't have to worry about making the mortgage payment. And I've been very blessed, because while this has been going on and a lot of people have been losing work, I've actually had a job opportunity be presented to me. So
good. I'm very glad to hear that. Well, you guys are very talented, so it doesn't surprise me that during this, even though it's a crisis, it doesn't surprise me that you guys have been able to find work. I've been saying that to a lot of people working with our guys over at Cornerstone, and then one of my friends recently published his first illustrated novel. Okay. We've been friends for a while, and he said, well, it's done, but I don't really want to release it during the pandemic, and I don't think it's right. And I've heard a lot of people say that, well, this isn't right to be launching products and going to crowdfund and doing these things. But I say go for it and work during this time, because if we're quarantined, honestly, like one of the best professions to be in is a profession where you can work at home on your computer with an internet connection. You can work remotely with people. It's a beautiful way to get a lot of creative work done, and people need entertainment still. People want it. They want that connection. Things like this, like the podcast that we're doing now and that other people have been doing, but also like picking up books, something to read. Those things are valuable still, so.
Absolutely. I have to say, we have to say hi, because the artist for the Book of Ruth is on right now on the chat.
Hey.
Colin Dyer. Hey, Colin,
that's cool.
How are you?
Hey, Colin. How's it going?
The artist for the book. So it's great that he's in the live chat. And one of the things that we've been able to do with that book, because it was printed beforehand, Cave Pictures Publishing, who published books like The Light Princess that I wrote for them, The No Ones, Wyatt or Wild, Shapes, Billy Tucci's Appalachian Apocalypse. They have the book already in stock. And so what they're saying to their core group of comic book shops is, even though you can't get books from Diamond right now, if you want this book of Ruth, that won't be solicited until August, we will give this book to you so that you can offer it as new material to keep your doors open, to keep your customers walking,
to fulfill for them. That's right. Yeah, to give them content. That's exactly
curbside. So even though there's not books coming out, there's still the opportunity, at least for a small amount of books, to come out. And I know Marvel and DC are finally starting to get there too. Like certainly DC is using an alternative means of distribution so people can get books.
Absolutely. And so I think that's very important, that people are able to get reading material. I know there's a lot of crowdfund that's going on, and people are finding ways, like my friend and like DC, actually, I think they're using Ingram, and that's where I published my novels, through Lightning Source Ingram Book Group. So that's Amazon and Barnes and Noble, Books A Million are included in Ingram, but mostly it's going to be like the online distribution type of thing. So I think there's opportunity there, but also for up and coming talent, this torch has to be passed on as well. And it's been an inspiring medium, and I think it can grow from here going forward. We need it to continue. I mean, some people might argue I've done novel writing and I've done like some gaming and some other things, but just seeing comic books, to me, it feels like a superior storytelling medium. And also Hollywood's adopting it as well because they get a visual that helps when they're producing, to have that as well as the story, and artwork is never a bad thing if you have that to go with your writing. So
it's a lot easier to sell a story that's already storyboarded for you, which is
that's right.
What a comic is when you're going and approaching a Hollywood producer and saying, hey, I think you should do this.
Absolutely. It's a great tool. We've been using our preview material the same way pitching. I've been actively pitching to companies. We've been looking at options for funding. I mean, it's a big project, what we've been doing over where we're at. I think we've got like 11 titles, and a lot, all creator owned and independent. So, the guys are very talented, but that's been the challenge. We're working guys. So, yeah, so that's what it is. But, we have that as a tool to show, is what I'm saying. The comic medium, you can show your work. You can show a sample of story, even if you don't have enough to produce the whole book, doing a sample and showing that. And it's essential for pitches to have something to show. So, yep. Yeah, no, comics are great. And they're entertaining when they're finished too as well. They're pretty good.
Not so bad.
But yeah, that's great. And I also understand that you've done some movie production as well. While we're on that subject, you're a producer, right?
No, I'm not. I think there's somebody else out there named Meredith Finch.
Is there?
I don't think I to the best of my knowledge, I haven't produced anything.
So you have a doppelganger, is what you're saying, and she's.
You know what? She's it's
why
I have to be Finch Meredith 1. I'm like, I'm number 1. So if you go to Twitter, and people sometimes retweet at Meredith Finch or at Finch Meredith, I'm like, that's not me. Sorry.
Wow.
I'm surprised because Meredith's not a common name, and I don't think Finch is either. But there's at least
and in entertainment as well.
2 more of me out there. Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought that? Maybe she was piggybacking off of. Everybody would think that you're. Everybody thinks you're producing movies. They're gonna go out.
Get my lawyer involved. Somebody call my lawyer.
or it's your evil twin
as well,
looking to conquer you in entertainment.
I would have called my younger sister that, but we'll go with that.
Yeah, siblings can be great. It's so funny. So what's going on right now? You said your artist Colin Dyer is doing the artwork for Book of Ruth.
So that's done now.
And that's finished and being released. And you did Rose as well, so you own both of those titles.
I do, yes.
Now I specifically wanted to ask you, because you've done such iconic heroes like Xena Warrior Princess, you've done Conan, you've done Wonder Woman. These are very, and also the females at Zenescope. You did Van Helsing. There was a book that you wrote. What's that?
Little Mermaid.
You did the Little Mermaid, but you also did that special they had for Grimm Fairy Tales. It had Van Helsing and all the characters in it. Yep. And so you wrote strong female characters, and then you created that were already established, and then you created your own. And how do you feel about those things? It seems like a no-brainer, like when I think about it, because I love creating my own. I prefer that. I can write from other people's vision, but I like to create from nothing. But what's your take on it? Which do you prefer, creating your own from scratch? Is that your dream, or do you love the fact that you were able to go and do some of the most iconic female fantasy heroes in the medium?
I think there's benefits and pros and cons to both. So, for example, when I'm writing Wonder Woman, she had 70 plus years of history behind her. So there was and I wrote after Brian Azzarello, so the New 52, but there was still a very clearly defined set of parameters of this is what she can do, this is what she doesn't do, these are the characters in her universe. You can go back and access older characters, you can create new characters. But I knew what what my limitations were, as opposed to something like Rose, where when I first wrote that first issue, the possibilities were limitless. I could have gone in 1,000 different directions, and I kind of had to make the boundaries as I went along. So, but then there's a lot more freedom with a book like Rose because I can do whatever I want. versus a book like Wonder Woman or Xena or The Little Mermaid for Zenescope, where Conan, where I'm having to some of the licensed properties like Xena and Conan and Valeria, you don't just have to go through Marvel for approval, but you also have to go through Conan properties or whoever, or Universal, whoever owns that character also has to look at the script and say, yes, what you're doing with that character is okay with us.
And how did you fare with that, with the challenge of like recreating your own characters? There, so much has been done, and I think that's a challenge for writers. A lot of times, I have a method that I use where it's not so much what you do, it's how you do it. Makes a big difference as well. How you're doing things, how you're writing it, and telling the story. Maybe being innovative, but also, you have that balance between that and something that's familiar in the genre. How did you fare with all of that, creating your own titles? Did you have a clear vision or?
Well, I think actually working for DC and working on Wonder Woman, and then while that was happening, I also got the chance to audit some of the DC talent development classes that Scott Snyder was running at the time.
Hmm.
That really helped me quite a bit in terms of writing my own stories, because I knew right away the first thing I needed, and it's the first thing I look for now in any story I'm writing. And that is what's the reason for telling the story, because there are so many times where I have new writers that come up to me and they have this great idea for a story and they start telling me about it, and then I stop them and I'm like, what's the point? And they don't actually know what the point of their story is. Like, what is the arc that your character is going to take, where they start at this point A and then they grow, or they fall and then grow back? They have to take a journey. What's the journey your character's taking? And I learned a lot about that writing Wonder Woman and working for DC. And I was able to take that into writing my own characters like Rose. And I think that, quite frankly, informed all of the characters I've written since then. So it's informed Xena, and it's informed Valeria, and it's informed Conan and the Book of Ruth. I want you to take, when you pick up a story that I've written, I want you to know that you're going to take a journey with that character, and that you're not going to end up with a character not having changed or not having grown as a result of that. Hey, Rich, everybody's on this channel. I'm like, I've done other podcasts where I'm like, I know nobody, I know everybody on this one.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that everybody came to support you. I've been promoting it, but my channel's humble, I guess, to say. Yeah, we'll just call it a humble channel. But it's great that everybody came to support you. I'm very glad, because we just kind of want to honor your work and get some of your advice out there and your writing experience for people. So I'm glad everybody came, and hopefully people come to see the playback. We'll be able to catch some of that as well. I wanted to, there's something specifically I wanted to ask you about. The titles that you write here. I can share screen real quick and show you here. Because there's a lot of, I'm not big on controversial subjects, and to me this isn't really a controversial subject, but for a lot of people it is an important issue. And these covers look amazing. This obviously, like, they're so iconic, and these are female leads are drawn to be beautiful and attractive and those kind of things. And you write these very well, all of your titles, and even your titles that you created yourself. I've been reading into Rose. I just picked it up recently. And it's the same. And how do you feel about that across the medium? I mean, people have complained about, sexism in comics, and women being objectified. How do you feel on the scale of that, or is that kind of an inappropriate question?
It's not an inappropriate question at all.
Okay.
And I think what I would say is that women find their power in a variety of different ways. And one of the ways that they find their power is in their sexuality. That's not personally my power, because that's not what I found works for me. But there are women who've been able to make incredible careers based on their sexuality, and that doesn't undermine who they are intellectually. And
that's a great point.
I think that,
it's a form. I agree. It's a
medium, and I think when I look at, because I'm married to an artist, when I look at him drawing the female form, it's an expression of his appreciation of that form. And I think that naturally in life, we are drawn to beautiful things. And I think that comics are a result of that. There are comics that that like a horror comic, maybe that doesn't work for that. But I don't want to undermine or focus on something that that doesn't have a point.
I know I know exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you.
I feel like too, like for example, I think that the comic book publisher that would perhaps get criticized the most for that kind of thing would be Zenescope.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's a market for that. And just like there's a market for, if I wanted to go, I don't have to support that market.
That's right.
But that doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't have a right to support that market. We live in a free will. If I wanted to go and watch the Chippendales or go watch male nude strippers, I could do that. And I feel like I don't want to be in a place where people don't have the opportunity to express themselves and to enjoy themselves. When you take that away, we're taking that away from the medium. And there are many books that I've read that are far more graphic than any comic book cover I've ever seen. And nobody criticizes that because it's not visual. So all you're doing is you're criticizing a form of artistic expression, but not the artist, but not another one. And I think that it's for everybody to make their own decision.
I agree. Art is subjective, and I think you answered that with poise and professionalism, but also in a very real way as well, which I appreciate you for. I mean, ultimately, like you said, it's an expression of art, and people choose to support it or not. There's a market for it, which was very smart. I love that you said that because obviously, these are businesses, and to make money, they go to their strength. I have a friend, the guy who did Meteor Marley for me works over at Zenescope. He does grim fairy tales. He works with them. He does sequentials and everything. So I know the titles that they're doing.
Zenescope publishes some of the most feminist, positive stuff of the industry. Like when you're looking at their female lead characters, they are always empowered. They're always active. They're always controlling their universe, and I don't want to take away from their ability to do that because somebody is offended because 1 out of 100 covers they put out is slightly suggestive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And I mean, ultimately what you're saying, if you're speaking out against something like that, is that because somebody might find it objective, then nobody should have it. And that's not the way art is. People choose and you support what you want. Even if that's not your thing, if it's not what you're buying, and there's other people who do appreciate that kind of thing. So why put the reins on artistic freedom? I mean, that's one of the true freedoms that we have left, if any. I mean, we take freedoms when we can, here and there, but that should be a constant. Our creative freedom is something that it's an expression of ourselves. And it's rewarding, it's personally rewarding, and it's something that we can do, whether it's a professional thing or it's a hobby or it's just for fun, even something to unwind, there's a lot of people who go to paint class and do those things just to unwind. So, yep. And so I agree with you completely on that. That was a beautiful answer.
Thank you.
It sounds like someone's asked you that before. So you answered that like a pro.
It's been a while that I've had that question, but I'm always prepared for that question, if that's a good way of saying it.
Yeah, and that's why I was respectful. I wanted to ask you, make sure it was good, because I didn't want to ambush you. I wasn't trying to club you with a question.
Well, I think it's a fair question to ask too, because I think, I'm married to a comic book artist, and to say that Dave's never been accused of that, it isn't being honest, because he has been. But when I watch Dave draw, he is always just concerned about telling the story and doing the very best job he can, and making it appealing to the people who are reading his book. And it's upsetting for me when people don't see the amount of time and effort that goes into artwork and feel like they can spend 5 minutes criticizing somebody that somebody might have put a week or a year into doing.
Yeah, and I think that he's done his job very well, and you have as well. You guys are very talented, and so yeah. And I probably shouldn't have thought that I was going to surprise you. Anyway, I mean, you guys, I think you guys have seen a few fans.
At this point, what are you going to ask me that I haven't been asked before?
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have heard it all. I mean, you're a little bit in the limelight there. So he's been a staff artist for how many years now, DC?
Dave has been working for DC, I think, since 2010.
Yes, yeah.
But I think he worked for Marvel 10 years before that, I think around 2000, 2001, and then Top Cow. And so he's been in the industry. How long have you been in the industry for, Dave? Since 1994. Was that 26 years?
Wow. Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
Now we're aging ourselves. I'm much.
You outed him.
Just in case anybody's wondering much.
You outed him publicly. Hey, and I wanted to let you know I'm trying to play it cool. Even though he's my favorite penciler. So is it working?
You're told I would never have guessed. So you've totally done a good job.
No sweat. No sweat.
He says thank you. He can hear. He says thank you.
Oh, he can. Yeah, absolutely. No, I've been a big fan. Actually, when I started writing,
he might like step into this podcast, then we'll be in trouble. He'll take it.
Yeah, right. You write Xena Warrior Princess. I don't think he's going to shove you out of your own podcast. It's not going to happen. I think you write enough warriors.
I'll get my sword out, push him away.
He's in for a fight.
That's every day of his life.
It's so funny. But he inspires me personally. I mean, aside from being a very talented penciler, that everybody, everybody knows that. When I started out, I was writing with Jesse Hansen and doing these scripts, and I noticed there was a barrier between artists when I first started. Not always, but in certain descriptions of panels and things, it's better to have a visual medium. Sometimes an artist wants to see something, and where we're creating our own content, there's essentially no budget. I wanted to learn how to draw because I wanted to tell better stories. I wanted my visual to match the literary side of it, and so they started coaching me, and I started doing some pencil work for my stuff, and so I used, obviously the guys gave me pointers, and they're very experienced as well, but I used some pencils that I found online. I don't know if did I make a boo-boo, or am I not supposed to? They were for personal use. I used them for reference to look at like his cross-hatching and his shading and his line work, and so I have some pencils here that I could show progress, right? So I created this character called Mammoth Monk. It's in Hayward Saints 8. Okay, so I've got a picture of him here. This is a rendering for the upcoming cover. We're going to crowdfund. Yeah, yeah.
Dave's coming. Well, you just took it away. Dave's coming in to peek.
Oh, I did? Okay, here, I'll pop it in there. Hey, Dave.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing just fine. Yeah, I was just showing some artwork here.
Live with Meredith.
Hey, thanks for popping in. I appreciate it. I'm a big fan.
Pleasure. I'm, not really here.
He's eavesdropping.
No, that's cool. So what I was saying about it, I didn't want to go too far with it, Mrs. Finch, because I didn't want to be rude, but he did inspire me to draw. Like, this was done by Carlos Villas. He's doing the cover because we're going to crowdfund, but this was my first ever drawing, okay? This was when I started. Okay, that's what we got there. Drawn on pen, on lined paper, okay?
That looks like what I would do.
My first ever design.
Significantly better than what I would do, but...
Okay, I already know it's bad, Mrs. Finch. Now you're just being rude. And so, I started working with the guys here. I should have left my sense of humor out of it, out of this. And so I did that.
How much better you've gotten already?
Okay, so no, it gets better than that. I think I did this piece here, which I'm not super proud of. This one was kind of awful, but then we got better, and now we got to the point where I can do artwork like this. This is my line work now, which is not bad for a word nerd. I'm primarily a writer.
That's
very good, actually. Yeah,
that's actually,
it's an amazing amount of growth.
Yeah,
from where I started, it took me probably a year and a half or so, and I was drawing from that's like a second grade art level, and then the guys helped me out.
Don't criticize me because I couldn't do that.
Well, no, our guys over at Cornerstone are very good, and Mr. Finch, I actually used a lot of your pencils I found for Batman and things online to get some of the techniques down. I ended up getting, and then my artist as well, Joseph Arnold, and I got some pointers from Paris Cullins, and I got some pointers from Jesse Hansen. And so this is one of the finished pieces that I did here that the guys inked and colored for Hayward Saints 8. And then I've got another one in here. Let's see. Oh, I did this one as well. Yeah, I did this. This is my line work as well here. And so
who would have thought in a year you'd go
Yeah.
from nothing to?
Well, that took more than a year, right?
about a year and a half working with them and them giving me pointers. And then I did like this piece for my kids. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and what is it, Freddy Fazbear?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We know all about that.
Don't even talk to me about that.
My kids were obsessed with it, and so I was like, well, it's a pizzeria, and like my childhood, I was obsessed with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I did a mashup. I just got the idea and did a mashup piece, and I'm gonna get it inked and colored for them someday for a poster. But
you say Freddy Fazbear, you're gonna have 3 Finches in this room, and then the whole conversation's gonna take a dive down the toilet.
Oh.
I know it was. My kids were so obsessed with it. They played every iteration of that game. And it's funny, now they're so into video games. When I was younger, I did a lot more reading. We had video games, but I think that's something that's affected the market as well, as being able to convert what you write into digital media is a big advantage, because I'm telling you, I mean, Stan Lee could, bless him, could crawl up out of his grave and give my kids a comic book right now. Thanks for coming in, Mr. Finch. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And so, like, he could come and give my kids a comic book, and they'd be polite because, I obviously, because I'm here, and they'd be respectful.
It's not
but
Scott Coffin.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Stop him at the door.
How do I know it's Scott Coffin? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. If you have a kid that knows Freddy Fazbear or Five Nights at Freddy's, you know who Scott Coffin is.
Oh yeah, no. Somehow I didn't pick up on that. What's it? He's the creator, right?
Yes, I hear about him all the time.
You do? I didn't even know. I don't even think my kids know who created it. They're just download the games and go for it.
They've got, I've got like the novels. I've got the graphic novel. I've got Sanchi versions of this character. I've got some other kind of version of these characters. Just to tell you that my kid is obsessed. He's like, Dave. Yeah, no, Colin. The answer to that is no.
I know my kids played it. I think they got 5 different games out. Like, we got every one of them, and they were watching YouTube videos on it, content. Like, they're right into the lore of it and everything. Like, there's whole lore that's associated with it. But I mean, even like I said before, if Stanley walked in and gave them a book, they'd take it and be polite. But after he left, they'd be back on Fortnite, or they'd be playing, whatever, Xbox One. And so I think those kind of things, it's kind of changed. It's kind of changed. I mean, I want to say my assessment of the comic book industry is that every moment where they've had a dip in sales, in addition to the creative model, the digital age, increases in the digital age in media, movies and video games. Every time there was a leap, it affected it. And now, we're in a position where gaining new readers is going to be harder than ever. Yes. We have like the nostalgic and the older guys that have followed it their whole life and have that nostalgia for it. But this younger crowd coming up, if they're born in and they get video games first before they're reading, then that can have a big impact on it as well. Another thing too is, how do you feel about the we were talking about indie versus mainstream, and how do you feel about the mainstream creative model versus the indie creative? The indie creative model is obviously more, you have a lot more freedom. The corporate model is tough, and you and Dave have seen that at the highest level with editors who are there making decisions on story titles, forcing edits. When you have a clear vision, how's that process been? Is it hard working at that corporate level because there's so many cooks who are too many cooks spoiled the soup?
I would actually say that in terms of working on big titles like Wonder Woman or Xena, I was given a lot of freedom on those titles.
Oh, cool.
When I took over Wonder Woman, Diane Nielsen said to me, she's your character. You have freedom to do what you want with her. And of course, I tried to be respectful of what had gone before. And Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang were an award-winning run. So I didn't want to throw that out. But I didn't feel as constrained as I have on other characters. I think you tend to be more constrained on characters that are properties. Like, I'm not sure I'd ever want to write a Star Wars or a Star Trek book, because I think they're owned, and there's a lot of oversight that goes outside of Marvel into, every actor gets to approve what they look like, how they're portrayed, and that kind of thing, I think, is where you can run aground when you keep hitting up against the minutia of putting out a book.
Absolutely. And those things are time consuming as well in the production process. Um, and I mean, although there's parts of it that are necessary, I think that it's almost a disadvantage when you have the person who has the vision creating the story is be their decisions, or the decisions are being made by other people who are not creating the story. And I mean, it's not to say that that's their business model, they make those choices, but I think that a clear vision from somebody who's a talented writer is going to be strong, very strong. And I think they saw that in you, Mrs. Finch. That's probably why you got that creative freedom on the titles that you were. There's a lot of expectations for those titles. There's a lot of nostalgia behind those, but like you said, you did get that freedom. So I think they were confident in you, I imagine.
Certainly with Marvel and DC with their main line, when they're hiring somebody, you don't just get hired. Hey, you want to do Wonder Woman? You have to pitch the project. You have to pitch a story arc and a theme and a philosophy for the character. So they have a pretty good idea of what they're going to get, and then they're willing to, as long as things are rolling along in the way that you said things are going to be rolling along, they're pretty willing to give you the freedom to do what you want with the characters. Because these days with characters that have been around as long as Wonder Woman and a lot of the X-Men characters, Batman, Superman, an 18-issue run isn't going to make or break that character. You're going to love Cyclops or Jean Grey or Wolverine because you love those characters, or Wonder Woman. And if you don't like my run on it, that's fine. You just won't read my run on it. So I think they're willing to take a risk because maybe it will be something that will be a hit and you'll get a Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo Batman run.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're willing to take that chance because these characters are so iconic that if it doesn't work out, then they'll know after a few issues, and instead of doing an 18-issue run, you'll just do a 6-issue run. So it's
Absolutely, and that's not unheard of. They've canceled series before because the sales were down, it wasn't working, those kind of things. Those are decisions that they have to make as a company, obviously. But taking those risks, you got to, like, over time, you got to wonder. I mean, there's a lot of money with these large entertainment companies. I think that affects the market, them taking the risk, but also the pool of talent that's available. I think nowadays there's been a shift in the market as well because people who are intelligent and talented, they get experience, and if they are able to create something on their own, they can go and do it on their own. Print on demand has never been easier. I just coached a guy and pushed him to do that. Like I said, that illustrated novel. His name's Dan Lawson. He lives in New Jersey, and he's a talented guy. I read the script before he went. And he'd never written anything before, but he watched a lot of pop culture, and he had this idea in his head, and he was very clear. It was a clear vision he'd been thinking about for a long time. And I said, "Go for it, man. Just do it." But he did that and printed. It was easy for him. He went through Lightning Source Ingram Group, just bada bing, bada boom, and he's got a book in hand. And so it's easier than ever for people, especially people. That's a novice who's never done this before. Somebody who has experience, they have a good idea. They can go and develop it and go and publish themselves. So there's that contrast. Like, rather than go to DC, if they've already got, a lot of artists will go there to get credentials, but like giving your work away to the company as opposed to developing it and doing it on your own that's the difference in the market, whichever category you want to go to.
Well, and I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of the answer that I give most new writers when people ask me how they can break in. I always say to them, you have to self-publish, because it's much easier to give a Marvel or a DC or a Zenescope or a Cave a book that you've already written versus a script. Like, it's much easier to be able to tell if you can story tell and you understand how to do that. And they're much more likely to give you a chance if you've already shown you can follow through. So I do think that in terms of
that.
Big companies are looking for, they're looking at who's self-published. If you're that motivated and you think you have the story that has to be told, then tell it. Maybe you can't use Batman, so you use another character instead and tell that story. And those are the writers they're looking for. And that's, I think, almost without exception, that's who DC is looking at for their talent development group, are all people who've self-published and are independent writers that have garnered a little bit of recognition for doing what they're doing.
and they're willing to put that work in and do it themselves as well. They have that drive. So I think that's important as a writer too. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because being an independent writer, nobody's going to pay you. I don't know, just to be, even if it sounds blunt, like nobody, what I say to people is nobody pays you to do your own shit.
I'm still
So-
not making, I'm still not making money. Just so you know. I'm not making money.
It's so
I'm not
hard.
paying the mortgage, Dave is.
You know, it's so hard. Yeah, the independent is it can be rough. When I started as a novelist, it was hard on me. I came out right when that big boom in self-publishing was happening with print on demand, like when they had there was Lightning Source, but also the Amazon publishing, and people were publishing on Kindle. It was out on digital, and there was a big influx in independently published material. And I came out right at that time, and I tried to reach out to some people who are well known. I thought, well, this is great. Now I've written my first book. I was like, now it's time to go. I want to go make some friends. I want to go see what this market's about, what these people are like. And it wasn't nice. Like these guys, they wanted to, I got stomped on so many times, just so, and it was, and obviously, like, I loved what I was doing, so I didn't want to give up. I was just like, geez, what's with these guys? What's going on? And I had a conversation with James Elbar, who I'm a big fan of at a convention. I got a chance to speak with him for an extended time. It was great. But we were talking about that, and he said something that was very significant, that that the quality of indie publishing was changed because it became easier. So anybody could do it. So when you're taking a chance on an indie guy, there's so many indie guys that, and anybody can publish. You kind of get like that once bitten, twice shy thing, where you've taken a chance on an indie book and it was poorly done, and you're like, this is a disappointment. So that could affect the market. But I came in right when that just blew up, and so then, but that's what got me in with these guys at Cornerstone, is that I had published work. That's one of the requirements before you're able to submit, and there's a 3-part submission process to get in, but you have to have some kind of published work. So Jesse was aware of that as well as you, that's a defining factor when you're taking on new talent, if they were willing to do it themselves. So love it. I love it. Did I talk too much?
No.
You knew you were coming in. I said I was a word nerd. It's right on the banner back there. So
Yeah, wait a second. I see that very end hashtag.
yeah, the Inexorable WordNerd. I get everybody gets so taken aback when they see that. It's it was a joke in house when we were writing, because I like wordplay and I like jokes and I like play on words. I said wordplay, I meant play on words and jokes, and I would regularly write great big long pamphlets to Jesse, like in chat, just like ridiculous amounts of script, just boom, wear out keyboards, and so I just got the joke. Joke came out one day that I'm a word nerd for a writer, a word for a writer. So that's where that came from. And go ahead.
No, I said it's perfect.
The inexorable part, I think inexorable is my favorite word. I used it at the end of my novel, but it's a word that means unstoppable, and I think that's something else as well. You mentioned, like, you're still trying to make money with your indie titles, try to spread it around. Right now, it's going to be very hard with this pandemic as well, but everybody feels that struggle. That I think that's an important thing. The fact that you were, and I appreciate your honesty saying that, as someone as accomplished as you, letting people know that, hey, that struggle's everywhere. So people know to be unstoppable. If you choose to be unstoppable, then nobody can stop you.
I think when you're in a creative industry like writing or art, it is the drive within yourself to do this, irregardless of whether you make money doing it, is ultimately what makes you successful at it. Because if you don't have something within you constantly pushing you forward to create, why would you create?
You have to love it.
You have to have a story or a need within yourself to tell that story, or to draw that picture, or to sing that song, or write that song, or play that instrument, that is beyond making money at it, that you're just doing it because it's something you have to do. And then it's the very gifted and the ones who put in the time and the effort, and maybe it doesn't happen in a year or 2 years, but they persist because they're driven to that it's within them. There's something within them that forces them to do it. And that ultimately is what translates, I think, into success.
I agree. The drive is that I love it. I love creating it. I enjoy creating it. Just at that stage of, and I want to share it. And you mentioned 1 or 2 years, and 8 years. Self-published my novel when I was 30, and then got in with these guys, and I learned the medium. And it took about 3 years of mentorship, really, like 2 years. Was learning about writing script and writing scripts for him, and going through that process with Daniel Horowitz and Jesse, and then learning how to draw after that when we got to the development stage. We got artists on teams, and aside from family as well, and then doing shows and promoting. And then life happens, trying to get. So there was a lot of that going on. Yeah, baby, absolutely, new baby and kids. Got kids coming out of my ears. They're sprouting up all over the place. So there's that. But yeah, 8 years. But although I have published work, I self-published, and I was lucky to get commission work to do tabletop content. So I did adventures and short stories. So that went well. But I love it. I want to do this comic medium thing, and I love the guys that I've been working with. So I think it's a beautiful expression. I think to be able to do that, to work with the artist and do a visual, and to get the opportunity to artwork. I love that. I loved learning that. I'm in debt to the guys forever for that, because being able to see it, you don't always have the money to pay for an artist. So even if I'm not at that level where I'm doing professional work, I'm definitely not consistent enough to do sequentials, or I'd be trying that, because the money for art's expensive. But being able to see it, to see your work when you're visualizing it all the time and thinking about it in your head, and being able to get just enough of ability so you can see it on paper, see it visually, is very rewarding. To make that expression, I love it. I don't want to ever do anything else, but I have to do a lot of other things. But I definitely don't want to do anything else other than that. I'm in love with it. So how is that how is that for you? Did I that's just my take on it, but isn't that we were talking about expression earlier, and isn't that a beautiful thing to have a visual, and especially you, where you have David in the home, if you want to see something and he draws it, I mean, that must be fantastic. Is it?
I don't often ask him to draw things for me, because what I would say is that it's working with what, and I think part of that is because whatever artist I'm working with on a character defines that character for me. So, for example, I wouldn't ask Dave to draw Rose for me at this point, because for me, Rose is a Guara, and there's nobody who captures that character better than Egg. And
Oh, that's fantastic.
same goes for me. Ruth is the character that Colin did, and it's incredible and such a blessing to be able to say that, to see Lee Weeks and Jason Fabok and David and Billy Tucci do their versions of that character in the book. The character that I'm relating to, and the character that I'm writing, is a character. It's informed by the artwork of the artist.
I like that.
So
I like that.
My Wonder Woman is Dave's. Like, that's Wonder Woman for me. Just like Xena is Vicente Fuentes, and I'm sorry, Vicente, I know I butchered your last name. Or My Little Mermaid is Miguel Mendonca. Like, it's whatever artist I get to work with on a character, that's who for me personifies, their artwork personifies that character.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that.
As you walk by.
I know. Yeah. Like, we were talking about that backstage before we went live. Ambient
for my house.
So much ambient. There's nothing you can do about it. So it's busy in here, this crowd. And so I agree with you on that. I like working with the artists and letting them have their vision as well. Having designs are good when you go. I like the advantage of having designs when you go to colorist stage. That's what this piece is behind. A friend of mine in the studio rendered this for me to help me get me started, so we could give it to the colorist for color reference, because that saves a lot of time to have a reference point to start from, at least, and then variants are fine. But yeah, having the artist do his own take on it, like with Joe with Hayward Saints, he had his own take, and I draw it and it looks different when I draw mine, and so having that artist identity on it is something I think that's important to for them to have. You know what I mean? Like express themselves a little bit. So, and you get a better book, I feel. I think that if they're just drawing like a robot, you know what I mean? That's not what an artist naturally wants to do. An artist naturally wants to express themselves. And so I like the idea that you acknowledge that. I mean, your experience too. You've worked with a lot of artists, but you know,
I've been, again, very fortunate because I've worked with incredible artists.
yeah, I would say so. But probably the best artist in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Not
I mean, no, that's fine.
Too,
That's
so.
okay. That's not conceited at all. I mean, this is a fact we're talking about here. You work with the best artists in the world. So, so you know, for people who are watching, you know, artists like to express themselves. They like to have their own imprint. They have their own identity. And so even when you're working with indie artists and things, I think I noticed that it's true there as well. When you work with a new guy, even if he doesn't have a lot of experience, they want to express themselves as well. They want to make a name for themselves. They want to enjoy the work they're doing, and letting them do that will get you a better book, I think.
The most important thing is that you have a really clear idea of what you're looking for a book. So, for example, when I was looking at artwork for Rose, I knew as soon as I looked at a lot of art, but as soon as I saw Egg's artwork, I knew that was the right artwork for the book. And the same goes for Colin with the Book of Ruth. I knew exactly what kind of look I wanted. So even though I looked at artists who were equally as talented, their art style didn't fit the imagery or the visual that I had in mind for the book.
Gotcha.
So when I saw Colin, I knew exactly. And so I think if you're a writer or you're a creator, it's important that you have an idea in mind of what kind of a look you're going for. But then when you hire the artist, if you're fortunate or blessed enough to find the right artist, then I think it's really important. And I always live by the philosophy that I hire the very best people I can. And then I just let them loose to do their job to the very best of their abilities, because I'm not a visual storyteller. I'm a writer. I'm not a colorist. I'm a writer. I'm not a letterer. So I hire the very best people that I can to do their best job. And hopefully when we all do our best, we make, we're bigger than the sum of our parts.
Absolutely. I like that. Yeah. Jesse has very good instincts on that. And where I'm very new, I've learned from him, so I've gotten quite a bit better. Very important style fitting script. Yeah, he's chiming in right there at the same time. Yeah, he's a stickler about that, and he's very good at it. He's got keen instincts, and so a lot of just for an example, when we did Meteor Marley, I've got a throw copy that I've got here, but I'll show you the style real quick of this here.
Oh yeah, that looks great.
I've got a PDF actually. Here, I'll do the PDF and I'll share it so that you can see it up close just for a second. Just for the sake of conversation here while we're at it, I've got a PDF right here of it so I could show. Kleber Souza Lima is a Brazilian kid. He's about 21. And Jesse brought him in as a freelance. He'd had no professional work and he wanted to work for comic book companies, but he couldn't get hired. And he told me while we were working on this title that he submitted to many publishers in the United States and internationally, got refused every time, got told twice to quit drawing. And he's 21. He's just a young kid, very talented. And Jesse brought him in, and we did Meteor Marley. So this isn't his artwork. That's a promotional piece. Some other guys did. But let's go through here and get to the pages for Meteor Marley. If I didn't go past them. Yeah, right here. And so he drew this cover, and it was colored by Brandy Dixon. I actually was drawing at this point, so I was able to lay this out. It was inspired by Michael Jordan. Because the pose and the mouth open and she's dunking a basketball. Okay, so but look at the his anatomy is very good, is exciting and dynamic, and here's the early story with Marley Ray, but his lines are fantastic, and his script accuracy, considering that English isn't his first language, is incredible. Better than some guys who are native English speakers. And so what I wanted to say about it is Jesse helped him sharpen up his portfolio, and he did some samples. I think he did some G.I. Joe and some other things, helped him build a portfolio. Next thing you know, he's doing Rick and Morty sketch cards for Cryptozoic Entertainment. Then he gets picked up by Black Box, and they make him a cover artist. Now he's over at Zenescope doing Grim Fairy Tales, drawing over there, doing sequentials. So, and
fantastic.
and what I wanted to say about that is that he does the style matching the book, and Jesse found him first, and he's very good with the female anatomy. He draws females very well. Um, and so we brought him in where it's a female lead character. He was like, yeah, he draws his female characters very good. I think he'd be good on this, and brought him in. So I know exactly what you're saying. Like I'm slowly learning that part of it. I've gotten a lot better since with working with him. But yeah, you guys are definitely both linear on that. And I think it's important as well to find an artist that can do that's a fit for the project that you're looking to do. And that can be said for the colorist and for everybody as well. Certain comics have a tone. I've seen comics that were much better with the brights. Things like Spider-Man are always when they're well done, they're very bright. I mean, he's red and blue, like the colors anyway, but you don't generally see a dark story with him in it. You know what I mean? But then you got other stories that are much better drawn when they're gritty and dark. Going way back, I can even see like Bernie Wrightson when he did the old Creep Show hardcovers I used to read as a kid. That was how I experienced horror for the first time in a literary form.
I think a case in point would be Triona on Rose. I knew I wanted. I had a couple people do colors on the cover, and
let's show that.
I just loved the way her pastels and really pale sort of rendering. She does. Oh my gosh, she does a beautiful job with dappled light. But that book would not be that book. She was perfect. She was a perfect coloring match to Iguara, and that book wouldn't. I feel like it's, as much as he did the artwork, she really brought such a mood and ambiance to every single page with her colors. And that book is, I think, is as much the success of it a result of the art that she put into it and the work she put into it as it is Iguara's, because he designed the characters, but she nuanced them. And so, and I was very grateful and blessed to work with both of them on that.
No, she's talented. I definitely like the style of this. And Drusilla, too, I wanted to say has been a great antagonist so far. Fantastic job. But I know what you're saying, like with the style of the book. In a lot of places where it needs to be soft, it is. And it's handsome, and this has been a great book so far. I love it.
Thank you.
But just so that everybody can see here, Meredith, the creator of Rose, I picked this up on Comixology. And you can get a subscription very easily. They have it like a bundle subscription where you can take out books, or you can purchase books, graphic novels individually if you want. But this is all Meredith Finch here. She took her experience, she worked mainstream, and then she had her own vision, and she created Rose, and now she has Book of Ruth. Both of those books are finished and available. You know what scene I loved, Meredith, was this right here. This was so good for me. I don't want to spoil the book for people, so I'm trying not to go too far, but I really, really wanted to show this scene, how this was so good for me. I love this here with the story.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that is so cool how she the vengeance for her father, and how he's chained up and he's dead. He's going to be immoral and dead, and watch her power grow. He's gonna sit there. She's gonna make him sit there and watch how she defies him even after death. It's fantastic.
Twisted woman. I definitely didn't want her after anybody I know.
I think it's exactly what you would all want if you want fantasy. I love fantasy, so that genre is right up my alley. But the style of this book is fantastic. I got into it. I was gonna get it earlier, try to have it finished before we came in today, but this week has been insane. So I got a good majority into it, and I don't want to spoil it anyway because it's a fantastic book. It's definitely worth picking up, and so. Yeah, you can get that right over on Comixology if you want. Now, can people order these books from you directly? Where's the? I know they can get Rose at Image, and then Book of Ruth.
Image Comics, and then Book of Ruth will be through Cave Pictures Publishing. It won't be. It was supposed to be in the solicitations that came out in May. Obviously, because of COVID-19 and Diamond shutting down, it won't be. The solicits have been pushed back to August, which means it'll be available. I believe that puts it to November.
Okay.
If you'd be able to order it. You want to order in August from your local comic book shop. Let them know that you want that book, so that it will be in for you in November, which makes it actually fabulous Christmas present. So
And
for you
I think it's a
early
good
bird
investment.
shoppers.
Absolutely, it's just in time for Christmas. And I think if you like fantasy, that would be a good investment to pick up this title and support Mrs. Finch. She's very, I mean, all the titles that she's done, iconic characters in the fantasy genre. She knows this genre, and these are her personal visions. So you're going to be getting, you're not, obviously it's a treat to get these iconic characters from her, but now she's creating her own, and so you'll be able to, yeah, plug. Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, he knows.
Do my best.
He knows how to do it.
I'm the worst at self-promotion. So
No, that's okay. We're shameless here. We'll plug our guests, let you plug yourselves, plug away. We don't care. That's what it's all about, is getting books in people's hands. So, that's the end result. That's where it all happens. So, absolutely. And so after this, do you have anything planned, Mrs. Finch? What's next? Now that this book's done, what's the plan now? And now I know we have a pandemic and you have a family, but there is time, hopefully, to write. And what's on your plate right now?
Right now, I'm just finishing up another short one-issue story with Colin, who did the artwork for the Book of Ruth.
Nice.
And it's another adaptation of a biblical story, but a small one. And I'm not going to tease who it is. And then I can't really say much about what's going on next because I'm still not sure myself. I'm in discussions with a publisher. And so I know I'll still be writing. I'm just not sure. I do have, actually, as I say that though, I do have another book coming out from Cave Pictures Publishing called Fantasties. It's
nice.
an adaptation of another fantasy of a George MacDonald book. And for people who don't know who George MacDonald is, he was that book Fantasties was the inspiration for C.S. Lewis to become a fantasy writer, and really I think it put him on track to be the writer that he was, and the philosopher and the intellectual that he was. So it was a huge honor, because C.S. Lewis is a big favorite of mine, to be able to write and adapt another story by George MacDonald, because The Light Princess, which is the book I did through Cave Pictures Publishing with Renee DeLiz and Ray Dillon, was also a George MacDonald story. So
that's fantastic.
That is coming out this year. And the artwork is by Christine Mori, and she's just been, I don't even know how to describe it. And it's another situation where I think it's a perfect pairing of the artist for the script. And then we have Triona, who did the colors on Rose, doing colors over Christine. And it's going to be a gorgeous book when it comes out. And
so you guys have already been working together. So
we have, yes.
So that's an advantage. I think that's a sign that it's been working and that you're going to continue with that, do some more projects.
We were looking for a color, so I was like, can we get Triona? She's always my first one. I'm like, can we get Triona? So she colored me on Xena. She colored me on Rose. Now she's going to color me on this Fantasties book. So she's
great.
Incredibly talented, and I love going back to people that I know and who will do a good job.
Absolutely, people that you can count on, and people that you work well with as well. Like I said, I mean, yeah, it's been working. So if it's not broke, don't fix it, type of thing. And Jesse was saying, love me some biblical stories. Meredith working on a couple right now. In fact, yeah, he had some books coming out too. He had a Joan of Arc story that he was inking with some of all our guys were commissioned. So
that's amazing.
Cornerstone Creative Studios. Yeah, we're a talent agency, so you can get people can get freelance talent. So he lined up all the guys for that book, and he's inking it. And then he did a Jonah story where Jonah discovers the lost city of Atlantis. So it's like a mashup story, and that looked beautiful. The interiors were fantastic on that as well. But yeah, Jesse was saying that he's working on biblical stories as well. And whether you're into religion or not, I mean, I don't know if that's that's a fair statement.
You only need to look at my blog to know that I'm very much a Christian and I'm very much a believer.
Absolutely, and that's great. And I mean, we have values here as well, and attended. And so, I mean, what I was going to say is, for people out there who hear that and they're like, "Oh, well, church isn't for me." There's a lot of inspiring stories that are in this book. I mean, this is by far the greatest the greatest published work of all time. And so the stories in there are inspiring, and there's a lot of myth and lore that's in the book as well. And
I
so a
think,
lot of things to be interpreted or create
yeah,
stories from. So so there's ways that it can inspire you, even if you're not into reading. I mean, I would suggest that you read it just the same, but you know, it's greatest published work of all time. But yeah,
I would say that, I think the Bible can sometimes be a challenge for people because it's a big book and people don't know where to start.
mm,
But I also feel like the fact that there is such, people have a hunger or a thirst for stories of a religious theme,
mm,
even if they're not true to biblical stories.
yeah,
And even if instead of taking sort of a track that they might skew off in a completely opposite direction and be almost anti-Christian in their tellings, ultimately what they're saying is that people have a desire to explore and know more about spirituality and faith and
mm,
and a greater power. And I think that when people take biblical stories like we did with the Book of Ruth, and it sounds like what Jesse's doing, it gives people an opportunity to access a story in a way that is more understandable for them, and that they can relate more easily to, the life in 2020 versus life, you know 1300 years before Christ.
mm,
So I think when you see people reinventing and reimagining biblical stories, it's because, just like there's water, C.S. Lewis said it best. He's like, there's water because we thirst because there's water. Well, we have this craving for a knowledge and understanding and a need to explore faith and
mm.
spirituality because there truly is something out there beyond us, and we all take our own path and we take our own journey to understanding what that is.
That's a great point. You know, even for people who don't attend or don't have those kind of faith, they do crave a conversation for spirituality. It's something that's natural in people that interests us, and for some reason, whether you've attended church or you're a religious person or not, so it's there for a reason. That's a beautiful point. Yeah, Jesse was mentioning that our in the chat that our universe is based in creation as well. And I think you hit the nail on the head with everything that you said. And these values can be expressed in beautiful stories, and they're the core values of mankind. I mean, even if you don't believe in the Bible, if you followed the Ten Commandments and read that's essentially a framework to being a good person, which is something that we all strive to be, regardless of what your religion is or what your beliefs are. Um, and so those core values in mankind of can be expressed in comic books. And just like, for example, Hayward Saints 8, just the core story you were talking about before, um, what's the reason for telling the story and the novel. And this is Hayward Saints 8 Federal Offensive Responders is the adaptation of that novel. And ultimately it's a story of good and evil, where these guardian angels and the underworld are never directly interact with the heroes, but their presence is there and they're speaking to them and interacting with them. But if you notice when you read, they don't directly interact. And it's essentially a metaphor for struggles that we have inside of us every day. And the characters in the supporting cast and the villains are doing the same thing in the book. They're either corrupted or they're inspired by these entities. And so those entities all represent emotions and impulses and all of these things that are inside of us. So at its very core, like it's a good story of good and evil, and then there's
What
just
was
a
it
bunch
called
of
again?
oh, it's called Hayward Saints 8 Federal Offensive Responders. So we want to go to
Hey,
crowdfund, H A
Saint Say.
Y V
Uh-huh.
A R D, and I know that's weird. I had three names that I wanted
Hey,
to go with, and I just jumbled them all together. I think it was like
yeah, it's awesome.
Hayden. I can't even
Is that
remember
one of
all
your
three.
kids' names?
Oh,
Do you have a
my
kid
old.
named Hayden?
No, I don't. No, I just picked random names that went
I
with the
have a
last.
kid. I have a kid named Hayden. So
Oh, you do? No, yeah, I didn't. It wasn't inspired by my kids or anything. What honestly, it's weird. For the creation process on that name, I had Saints 8 already. I wanted to call it Saints 8, but I Google a lot of stuff that I do, and I wanted it to be unique, and I wanted to use the full name. So I was just trying to come up with a first name that rolled off the tongue with Saints 8, because I want it to be a little bit longer. It just didn't look right to me. So then I just picked 3 names and the letters. Like I was actually, I know it's awful, but I was just choosing a structure of letters that would roll off the tongue with Saints 8. So I was kind of stuck on H names. Yeah, like Howard. I think it's Howard, Hayden, and what's the Vard? Yeah, there's another one in there. I can't even remember what it was, but I had 3 of them, and I just mixed them together to do something weird. So, and the book's like that too. Yeah, it's fun. You know, there's very classic heroism in it. There's but some of the characters you know, comedic. They have comedic relief. They have you know, a little something for everybody in there. The 8 characters actually represent my favorite aspects of popular culture, because that's where my writing comes from. Because I experienced so much stuff up until the age of 30. In our technological age, video games and movies grew, and all this stuff, and inspired me. So, you know, like for Mammoth Monk is a character that was created so that I can write martial arts stories in my own way. You know, Ultra Ghost, who's the leader, is my action hero, cowboy rock star type. You know what I mean? So I get to write those things that I love with my own way. And so, so that was the idea behind all these. Intergalactic Knight, Alkin Felix is an alien. And he has this morning star that's made from it's a gift from the angels. That's the power of a dead sun that destroyed his home planet, and they gave him that as a gift. And so it's like a lightsaber. It makes a lightsaber look like a butter knife. So, and so that's how I get to write science fiction. You know what I mean? It's a toolbox in a way. Like I created characters that I love and develop them because I personally love them. So that it'd be a toolbox. So I'd enjoy writing them long term. So that was the idea behind that. Awesome. I put a little bit of thought into it.
I don't know any writer who doesn't put a little bit of thought into it.
You know, yeah, we love these things. I mean, ultimately at our core, like it's just we geek out on our own stuff. So is that a fair assessment? Is that safe? Or?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Awesome. So you saw it right there. That's the first time anyone's ever agreed with me. And now it's recorded and immortalized. So.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was the first time for everything. After this stream, I'm definitely going to go write it on the calendar so I don't forget this monumental day.
April 29th. Is today the 29th? I think it is.
I'm going to celebrate it like a national holiday. Somebody agreed with me. And then I had the great Meredith Finch on my show. My humble little show here. Oh, that's great. Hey, you've been great. I didn't want to take up too much of your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. No, this has been great. I wanted to switch gears at the end and give people in the chat, if they wanted to have a chance to ask you some questions. Would you be up for fielding some ground balls or what?
Of course.
Oh,
Fire
fantastic.
away.
All right. So if you guys have any questions in the chat, if anybody's here and you guys want to hit Meredith Finch with it, this is a great time to do that. Meredith Finch has extensive experience writing at the highest levels of comic publishing in the world, and she's doing independent work and she's done mainstream work. She has a lot of experience, so use it. You know, take this opportunity, ask her a question if you have something for her, and then we will put her to the test and see if we can find something that she hasn't been asked a million times at a convention.
I have 3 kids, so I promise.
Oh, wow.
Even if I don't know the answer, I'm going to fake it and make you think that I do.
So now you know you're talking to a pro. So when you ask her a question, she knows how to play the game. So you're going to get what you ask for.
You have to. I live with boys. If I don't give them a firm answer, it's chaos and pandemonium.
I know Buffy's outnumbered here. I feel so bad for her. She's got 4 boys here, and she's thoroughly outnumbered.
Yeah, toilet seats never down.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been through that about a million times.
That's fine. It's either it's not down or it's not dry.
Oh yeah, we've been through that before. Yeah, little guy. She made a thing. I can't remember. She wrote it out. I think it says, "If you sprinkle when you tinkle, be a sweetie and wipe the CD." And just doing that for the boys, and they were.
You assume that they're going to read that sign.
Yeah, I know that. It got my 11-year-old inspired.
Like they take their iPads in there now. I'm like, dude, your electronics don't go in the bathroom. Come on.
I know they do too. I know you're absolutely right. It's just like we're in a parallel universes. Like They live in identical parallel universes. It's the same thing.
Right.
They take that stuff in, and yeah, iPad goes right in with them, headphones and all.
Yeah.
It's so funny. What do we got here? I think we got some questions to field here. I think we got one
Oh,
for you.
sure.
Jesse Hansen, Cornerstone Creative Studios asks, you said that marketing isn't your forte. However, other than using the book itself to sell itself, what would you hear or know of that would help an upstart company really spread its brand?
I do think that Kickstarter was a huge way for me to get the Book of Ruth out to a broader audience, because if you can hit a certain level in Kickstarter, then they'll start putting you as like a project to watch. So I think Kickstarter was big. I think Facebook was big for me in terms of that, and I still think that it's big for me in terms of hitting people in a market. Instagram, especially if you're an artist on a book. If your publisher, get your artists to retweet and promote their books, because people if you're a writer on Instagram, you can maybe post some stuff, but I find that especially the artists on Instagram tend to have huge followings, so that's another way that you can promote your work. So it's kind of hitting your social media, hitting it often. I think with Rose through Image, putting out little videos. And if you go, I have a YouTube page, but I say that hesitantly because I think my kid is like stolen my YouTube and maybe posting some of his Five Nights at Freddy's stuff. But I do know that there is a YouTube page with some Rose stuff out there. So whenever I had a new book coming out, I do like a short little, like a minute or 2 or 3 minutes of what the story is about. Like, what's this trade about, with the music, and try to create the story within that short time frame. And people are like, oh, I love that. I want to get that book. So there's all kinds of different ways. And then also, you can always buy advertising. I haven't.
That's right.
I'm afraid to check how much advertising costs, but those are some of the means I've used to promote myself.
No, it's been
I don't
hard.
know how effective I am at it, but that's what I've done.
It's hard for me because I'm new, but just looking at both of you, you've done a plethora of work, and Jesse has as well. He does a lot of independent work because he's doing freelance, so he's inking and he's been published in a lot of books, and so that's another thing too, is bearing down and doing work, getting work published, taking freelance work even, and doing quality projects. Having a lot of those things, a way for people to read and see your work.
You have to treat marketing your project as much like a job as the project itself. And that's maybe something that people don't always factor in. So you have to treat the post project, if you want to get it out there, as much as anybody else. And hey, Jerry, because I see Jerry's on there too. Hey, Jerry, I'm glad you liked Ruth.
Absolutely, yeah. Gerald Lynch says, we're going to let him go ahead and swell your head here on this one. Hey, Meredith, Ruth turned out wonderful. Loved it. Colin killed it. So there you hear it. There you've heard it here, guys. Ruth turned out wonderful. So that's going to be coming out. You'll be able to order it in August, and then that will be available in November. So you can go to your comic shops and order that. Let's see, what do we got? I'm combing for questions. What do we got here? See, her and David are two of the nicest people you ever meet in comics. Yeah, I've noticed that so far. I have actually asked Mrs. Finch a couple times on Facebook. I got sent her way through Jesse because he knows her, and I've asked for advice on mainstream because she's a writer and she's written at the highest level of mainstream, and she's always been down to earth. I mean, essentially, I'm a nobody in comics, but she always treated me with respect. She was always responsive and always very cool. So I agree with you on that. I had the pleasure of meeting Dave today somewhat. I got to see half of his face in person. I know what he looks like, so I mean, but
looks the same person. But don't tell anybody, but I'm a nobody in comics too. So there you go. We can be nobodies in comics.
Oh, and she's humble too. So and so yeah, that's great. Hey, he mentions your talent. We all know it. We're pitching. I'm actively pitching now with our studio. It's a big project. I mean, we're gearing up for a crowdfund as well, but we've got enough preview content that we're we're actively pitching. And if we get into a position where we get picked up, I've got some things on the hook right now. I mean, obviously you've got your own projects that you're doing. I'm not sure what you have lined up for the future, but if we get into a position where we need a writer with some experience and stuff, maybe in the future, if you're free and you have something open, would it be all right to reach out?
Absolutely. You never know where I'm going to be. I never know where I'm going to
Absolutely.
be right now. So
Well, I mean, I know we could use we have a lot of guys that are experienced, but we could definitely use your experience. And so, if we do have some titles that are still in development. We've got a lot of strong female lead characters. It's classic heroism with modern themes, all ages. You can let your kids read these books. These are going to be, and they're exciting. So, I think you'd be a great fit. I mean, obviously, you'd be a great get. Is that what they say in entertainment? That's what the cool people call it, right? Be like, Meredith, you get Meredith Finch to write a title for your studio. That's a big get. That's what they say, right? Am I
I'm
cool
not
now?
cool. I told you already I'm old. I'm not cool. So yeah, that sounds great.
I'm pushing. Oh, that sounds good. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's great. Hopefully we can secure that. You know how it is. I mean, there's never any guarantees, um, but we're building something big and it's going to be a lot of fun. So, and you've been great. So I know you'd be a great fit with our people are like that too. Just very, even the guys that have a plethora of experience, they're always down to earth and very kind. It's a kind community. So, people don't hang around long if they don't have that. So, it's just one of those things. So everybody's been good. Everybody's been good though. Jesse's got a knack for picking up people that are. Let me see what we got here. People that are decent. It's gonna be
Thank
great.
you, Jess.
Anytime, Meredith. Anytime. Doors always open. Yeah. No, he spoke highly of you as well when he sent me your way when I had those questions. So. So he thinks highly of you, and now after meeting you, like I could see why you've been fantastic. You guys have both been fantastic. When your husband came into, he didn't crush my artwork or anything. He didn't tell me to quit, and I don't think he would ever do that. Yeah, give up. So yeah, no.
He's even offered to teach me how to draw, and I can't draw round circles. So
I just kept going. I think what it is I'm too stubborn to quit and too dumb to know how. That's what I tell people.
fair enough.
That's how I explain it. And so, yeah. So if we have any more questions, now's the time, guys. If anybody wants to ask something, if not, I'm probably going to let you get back. Let you get back to your life. But we've had other guests on. You've been great. If in the future, if you have any new projects or you have free time, reach out to me. Or is it okay to reach out sometime maybe for another booking? Come back. Everybody's welcome to recur as recurring guests to come back. Yeah, of course, no problem. You're welcome anytime. This has been a lot of fun. I was looking forward to this as well. I look forward to all my guests. It doesn't matter who they are. I think I'm just excited. This is fun. I like to get together and talk comics and talk theory and talk philosophy on creation and artistic expression and collaborative art form. This book is a mess, but I do want to show you that we honor it. We love this medium. This over here. Where my hand is, it got some water damage. Look, it got beat up a little bit. Okay, so this is my throw copy. I've got a throw copy that I sling around here, you know what I mean? And I can flip it out. So one I don't care about. And so, but it says here, it's got Jesse Hansen's little caricature there, but we got heroic fiction, and that's what our line's called. And, comics were funny books. Funny. They were in the funny papers. They became funny books. They were comics. They went to graphic novels, and they've evolved. And I think that this seal had this copyrighted, and we were all in agreement that we want to push books in this direction again. There's still people that I've met, not very many, but some that still call them funny books, and they're not. It's a fantastic storytelling medium, and it's grown a lot since. And we want to honor that by calling it heroic fiction. It identifies. It's literary, where it's we're telling fictional stories, but the heroic part of it is essentially honoring and identifying what people love about superhero comic books, and people love the heroes. And who doesn't love a hero, whether it's fictional or?
And there's all kinds of them right now.
Yeah, that's right. There are all kinds of them, and everybody loves that hero story, even if they're pulling a cat from a tree. And so that's what we're doing there. And then this over here is kind of my sense of humor, which is terrible, but got collaborative art form, and you get a gold star if you work together with other people nicely, do a good job, don't create a bunch of drama.
You did a good job. You got the gold star.
Absolutely, you get the gold star. We're going to put these on the cover of our books because all our guys are very good in the collaboration. That's the secret to our success in creating these beautiful stories, is that we have a lot of guys that are very good at working with other people and respectful, and we're able to share a lot of ideas and take advantage of everybody's experience. It's magic. It's pure magic. We love it. So what have I got here? I didn't say too much, did I, boss? What do you got to tell Dave that I'm ready for him to teach me? Jesse says he'll take your line work lessons.
He's getting ready to Twitch stream, so keep following on Instagram. You never know what you'll find out.
Yeah, hopefully some of that'll rub off on some of us. I wouldn't mind having a little bit of that magic in my drawing.
He's buying the stuff. When it actually happens, we'll see. But we'll see if he's getting set up. I think
he's world class. That's good. You guys are both world class. You guys are fantastic. This has been so great. Thank you, Mrs. Finch. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And so thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to let her get back to her life and let you guys get back to yours. But please subscribe to the channel, The Inexorable WordNerd. We're going to have multiple guests every week. Probably do 2 shows a week. And you heard it here too. Meredith said that she'd come back another time to talk about another project or talk and hang out with us some more. So come on back, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you can so you don't miss it when we go live. And you'll get that in your notifications as well. If you miss it, if you're at work or something, you'll see that we went live. You'll be able to catch the playback. So thank you all for tuning in, and thank you.
Thanks,
I appreciate
guys.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.